I'm MacKenzie, and for a long time, I genuinely believed I had life all figured out. My husband Tom and I had been married for just over 2 years. We lived in this bright, charming apartment tucked away in a quiet neighborhood where the trees were always in bloom and the neighbors still waved when you walked by. It wasn't huge, but it was ours. Cozy, clean, full of laughter. The kind of place you imagined starting a family in someday. We both had solid jobs that kept us busy but happy. I was a project lead at an advertising agency, which meant a lot of tight deadlines and creative brainstorming sessions over lukewarm coffee. Tom worked in sales at a sports nutrition company, a job he absolutely loved. He could talk to anyone, and that charisma paid off big time. We were doing all right financially, just focused on saving for a house. That was our dream. A house, then a baby. Simple as that. We lived modestly, by choice. Shared one car. Every morning, Tom would drive me to work before heading to his own office, and in the evenings, I'd make my way home solo. It wasn't ideal, but we made it work. We were a team, or so I thought. Then came the visit that changed everything. Tom's sister Sarah showed up, kids in tow. Her husband had passed away in a tragic car accident a year earlier, and ever since, she'd been navigating life as a single mother of 2. My in-laws, bless their hearts, were endlessly worried about her. Protective didn't even begin to cover it. They'd do anything to keep her from feeling alone, so they asked if she could come stay with us for a bit. I wasn't thrilled about it, to be honest, but I said yes. I mean, what kind of person says no to family in need? Tom was beaming when she arrived. He helped her unload the bags, hoisted the car seat into our living room with a big grin, and turned to me with those puppy dog eyes. "Isn't it great to have them here?" he said, clearly expecting me to be just as enthusiastic. I forced a smile. "Sure, it'll be nice to catch up." At first, it was kind of sweet. Tom played with the kids, read them bedtime stories, helped Sarah settle in. He'd pour her tea and listen to her talk about how hard things had been. I admired his compassion. Truly. But then something started to shift fast. His attention to her wasn't just brotherly anymore. It felt obsessive. He began pushing me to go out of my way for her, too. "MacKenzie, could you do Sarah's laundry while you're doing ours?" "She needs to relax. Maybe take her shopping this weekend? Can you handle dinner tonight? Sarah had a rough day." It was like I became invisible overnight. Suddenly, all my energy after a full day of work was being funneled into caring for someone else's children and playing host to a woman who barely acknowledged the effort. And Tom? He acted like I was being selfish for even mentioning how tired I was. "MacKenzie," he'd say, voice full of judgment, "Sarah is a single mom. She needs support. Can't you be a little more understanding?" I blinked at him one night, trying to swallow the lump of exhaustion in my throat. "Tom, I work all day, too. I come home and cook, clean, and now babysit. I'm burnt out." He scowled like I'd insulted his precious sister. "Sarah has it harder. You don't see what she's been through." I felt like screaming. Instead, I stayed silent, which only made me feel more alone. Sarah didn't act like a guest either. She settled in like the place was hers. Weeks passed, and she showed no signs of leaving. Her stuff spread through the apartment like a vine, first a suitcase, then kids' toys, then boxes in our hallway. And Tom? He stopped noticing me altogether. He'd come home, kiss the kids goodnight, ask Sarah how she was holding up, and barely look my way. I became an afterthought in my own home. One night, while I was scrubbing dishes after everyone had eaten and retreated to their Netflix marathons, Tom dropped a bomb. "MacKenzie, we need to talk," he said, leaning against the counter. I dried my hands slowly, already on edge. "What's up?" "Sarah's thinking of looking for work here, maybe making a fresh start." I paused, unsure where he was going with this. "That's unexpected." "She could use the help," he said. "I think you should quit your job and stay home with the kids." I swear to you I thought I misheard him. "You want me to what?" I said, blinking. "Quit your job," he repeated, as casually as if he'd asked me to switch the laundry. "Sarah will be working. Someone has to take care of the kids." I stared at him like he had grown a second head. "Tom, I'm not quitting my career to become your sister's unpaid nanny." His expression hardened. "You'd rather see Sarah burn out?" "No," I said slowly. "I'd rather see her take responsibility for her own children." He didn't answer. Then Sarah walked in, bright-eyed, like she'd just been waiting for her cue. "Didn't Tom tell you?" she said, all syrupy and smug. "I'll be staying here long-term, with my wonderful brother. He understands what real family means." The room tilted. "Tom," I said, "where exactly do you plan to fit 5 people in this apartment?" He brightened like it was the best idea ever. Well, now we have more reason to buy that house we've been saving for. I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. That's not the point, I began, but he cut me off. Not now, MacKenzie. I promised the kids I'd help with their puzzle. And he was gone, just like that. I stood there soaked in dishwater, heart pounding. From that moment on, it was like I didn't exist. He stopped driving me to work. I'm too busy, he'd mumble, grabbing the keys. I had to figure out my own way there and back, adding hours to my already hectic schedule. I came home one afternoon, hoping to get a jump start on dinner, only to find chaos. Sarah was stretched across the couch like Cleopatra, eyes glued to trash TV, while her kids turned the living room into a war zone. Crayon marks covered the walls. Soil from my beloved plants, my therapy, was scattered across the floor. A purple mystery stain bled into our brand new couch. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "what is going on?" She barely looked at me. "They were bored. I let them play." "This isn't playing. This is destroying." She shrugged. "They're just kids. Lighten up." I bit my tongue so hard it hurt. Later that night, I tried to talk to Tom again. We need ground rules. Sarah needs to contribute, and her kids can't just destroy the house. He sighed like I was a nag. "Can't you cut her some slack?" "Slack?" I snapped. "I've bent over backward for weeks. What about me?" "Keep your voice down," he hissed. "This is family. We stick together." And that night, as I lay in bed next to him, watching him snore peacefully while I couldn't sleep a wink, one thought haunted me. When did I stop being part of this family? And how much longer could I live like this? The days blurred together in a dizzying loop of work, chores, and silence. I woke up before sunrise to make breakfast for everyone. I packed Tom's lunch, laid out clothes for the kids, and tried not to trip over their toys on my way to the bathroom. My once pristine apartment now looked like a daycare that had survived a tornado. And Sarah? She floated through it all, untouched by responsibility. She napped in the afternoons, took long coffee breaks with friends, drove around town in Tom's car while I stayed home, elbow deep in dirty laundry. And every time I tried to speak up, Tom shut me down. "She's grieving," he'd say. "She's doing her best," he'd insist. But I knew the truth. Sarah wasn't grieving anymore. She was thriving, at my expense. One afternoon, I called out sick, just so I could stay home and breathe. That's how bad it had gotten. I needed a break, not just from the chaos, but from the feeling that I didn't belong in my own life. I sat on the balcony with a cold cup of coffee and stared at the city skyline, wondering how my life had veered so far off course. When Tom got home that night, he barely said hello before sitting beside Sarah and helping the kids build Lego towers. I waited until bedtime to bring it up again. "Tom, this can't go on." He didn't even look up from his phone. "What now?" "I can't do this alone. I need help. Sarah needs to start cleaning up after her kids. She can't just dump them on me every day." He sighed like I was asking for the moon. "MacKenzie, she's doing the best she can." "No, she's not," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "She's out shopping, getting her nails done, taking naps. Meanwhile, I'm running this place on fumes." Tom finally looked up, his face hardening. "If it's too much for you, maybe you should just quit your job. Stay home. That way everyone wins." There it was, again. I stared at him, heart pounding. "You think I'm the problem? Not Sarah? Not the fact that she's turned our home into a daycare/spa? You're blowing this out of proportion." That's when I realized he was never going to see it. So I did what he wanted. "Fine," I said. "You want me to quit? I'll quit." His eyes widened, surprised. "Really?" I nodded, but inside I was screaming. That night, while he slept like a baby, I made a quiet phone call to my boss. I didn't quit. I requested a 3-month unpaid leave. Thankfully, my company had a backup intern already trained. My boss, bless her, was supportive. "Take the time you need," she said. "We'll be here when you're ready." The next morning, I told Tom I'd quit. He lit up like a Christmas tree. "I knew you'd understand," he said, throwing his arms around me. "This is going to be great. You'll see." I forced a smile, but in my heart, a tiny switch flipped. This was no longer about trying to fix things. It was about watching, waiting, seeing how far this would go. And oh, it went. The very next day, Sarah handed me a list of errands she needed done. Milk, eggs, dry cleaning, and oh, could I also babysit while she went to get a massage? I nodded. But that switch inside me, it flipped again, harder this time. Days passed in a blur. I woke, cleaned, cooked, bathed kids, swept floors, folded laundry, and endured the constant sound of cartoon theme songs blaring from the living room. Sarah? She lived like a guest in a luxury hotel. Tom came home every night, kissed me on the cheek, and asked, "How was your day, babe?" Like I had nothing to complain about. Like this was the life I'd chosen. One evening, I was halfway through cooking dinner when Tom walked in, whistling a happy tune. "Sarah's birthday is next week," he said, leaning against the fridge. "I've got something really special planned." Sarah clapped her hands from the couch. "Ooh, tell me, tell me." Tom grinned. "It's a surprise, but clear your schedule for the 15th. I didn't say anything. I just kept stirring the pot, wondering what kind of surprise would be considered really special in Tom's book. I found out soon enough. The night of the birthday, Tom had everyone dress up. We piled into the car and headed to LeBlanc, the fanciest, most expensive restaurant in town, the kind of place Tom and I had always dreamed of going for our anniversary. But we never did, because we were saving for a house. We walked in and there they were, Tom's parents, smiling, hugging Sarah, acting like I wasn't even there. The entire evening revolved around Sarah, her bravery, her struggles, her amazing strength. I sat there, pushing my food around, invisible again. Then came the moment. Tom stood up, glass in hand, and tapped it gently. "I'd like to make a toast," he said, "to my incredible sister. Sarah, you've been through so much, and yet you're still standing. I admire your courage." Everyone clapped. Sarah smiled like she was royalty. "And," Tom continued, "to help make your life a little easier, I got you something." He pulled a small box from his pocket. My breath caught. For a brief, foolish second, I thought maybe, just maybe, it was something for me. Something to say thank you for everything I'd been doing, a pendant, a note, a moment of appreciation. But then he turned to Sarah. "Sarah," he said, "I know getting around with the kids is hard, so, here." He opened the box. Car keys. "Happy birthday, your very own car." The entire table erupted into cheers. Sarah jumped up, threw her arms around Tom. "Oh my God, you're the best brother ever." I sat frozen, staring at the keys, at the joy, at the absurdity. He bought her a car. I cleared my throat, trying to stay calm. "Tom, can I ask, how much did that cost?" The table went silent. Tom blinked. 20,000? I swallowed. "From where?" He looked sheepish. "Our joint account. But don't worry, I'll replace it with my bonus next quarter." That was it. I stood up, slow and steady. "Tom, you used our house savings without asking me?" He stood up too. "MacKenzie, calm down. You're making a scene." "I asked for a second car months ago. You said we couldn't afford it." "You don't need a car," he said. "You're home all day." The audacity, the disrespect, it all came crashing down. Tom's mother gasped, "MacKenzie, how dare you be so selfish?" I laughed, cold, bitter. "Selfish? I gave up everything for this family, my job, my time, my peace." Tom's father chimed in. "Tom is the head of the household. He knows best." I felt like I was being suffocated, like I was surrounded by strangers who didn't see me, didn't care. Tom leaned in, eyes wild. "That's enough. You've ruined this night. Get out." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just grabbed my purse. "Gladly," I said. And I walked out of that restaurant with my head high and my heart in pieces. I took a cab home. The moment I stepped inside, I began to pack. I left a note, simple, cold. "I'm staying in a hotel. Do not contact me." And just like that, I was gone. The hotel room wasn't much to look at. Plain walls, scratchy sheets, a tiny window overlooking a parking lot. But for the first time in months, I could breathe. No mess, no noise, no children climbing the furniture, no judgmental stares or passive-aggressive guilt trips, just silence. I didn't sleep much that first night. I tossed and turned, the restaurant scene playing on a loop in my head. Every word, every look, every humiliation. But by sunrise, I knew what I had to do. As soon as the law offices opened, I picked up the phone and made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Her name was Sarah Garcia, and she came highly recommended, known for her no-nonsense, fair but fierce approach. When I walked into her office the next day, I was shaking. Part fear, part adrenaline, and part heartbreak. She greeted me with a warm handshake and motioned for me to sit. "So," she said gently, "tell me what brings you here." I told her everything. The sister-in-law, the kids, the gaslighting, the financial betrayal, the restaurant, the car. When I finished, I looked up, expecting maybe disbelief or judgment, but all I saw was calm focus. "Based on what you've described," she said, flipping through her notes, "you have a strong case, especially the unauthorized use of joint funds. Let's get started on the paperwork." Just like that, it was real. I filed for divorce. Over the next few days, I focused on building my new life from scratch. I found a tiny apartment not far from my office. Nothing fancy, but clean and mine. I called my boss, explained the situation, and asked if I could end my leave early. She didn't hesitate. "Come back when you're ready, MacKenzie. We've missed you." That first day back at work felt like coming home. My coworkers welcomed me with open arms. No one asked prying questions. They just let me slip back into my role. One email, one project, one deep breath at a time. For the first time in ages, I had a sense of control again. A routine that didn't revolve around other people's needs. I was healing. Still, I didn't want war with Tom. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted what was fair. So I suggested mediation. We met in a neutral office. Me on one side of the table, Tom on the other, flanked by the same smug confidence he'd always worn. "I'm not asking for anything dramatic," I told him during our first session. "Just reimburse the joint account for Sarah's car and split what's left. That's it." He laughed. "Return the money? That car was a gift. She needs it." "She's not your wife, Tom. I was." The mediator stepped in, trying to redirect the conversation. But Tom wouldn't budge. He called me selfish, ungrateful, accused me of trying to take away the one thing that brought his sister joy. I sat there numb, letting him ramble. 3 sessions later, it was clear. Mediation wasn't going to work. We were going to court, and court was war. He painted me as a gold digger, claimed I pretended to be a victim, and never contributed financially, told the judge I quit my job to live off him, that I bullied his sister, that I hated children. I showed the judge pay stubs, messages, my leave request from work, photos of the destroyed apartment, proof of the account withdrawal. My lawyer didn't flinch once. And finally, after weeks of testimony and paperwork and cross-examinations, the judge issued her ruling. Mr. Johnson's use of joint marital funds to purchase a vehicle for his sister without the consent of his spouse constitutes financial misconduct. He is ordered to reimburse Ms. Scott for half the vehicle's value and pay her legal fees. I felt tears sting my eyes, not because of the money, but because I had been heard, believed, validated. It wasn't about a car anymore. It was about respect. After the ruling, Tom avoided eye contact as we left the courthouse. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. But of course it wasn't. A few weeks later, the bank transfer came through. He had to take out a loan to cover it. I knew from mutual friends that he was struggling, that the landlord at their new place was threatening eviction due to constant noise and damage, that Sarah still hadn't gotten a job, that the kids were running wild. I didn't feel guilty. He made his choices. I made mine. My little apartment quickly became a sanctuary. I bought new linens, hung art on the walls, set up a tiny herb garden on the balcony. I took long walks, caught up with old friends, threw myself into work. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. One Sunday afternoon, as I was sipping tea and reading on the balcony, a knock echoed from the front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole, and my heart skipped a beat. Tom, disheveled, tired, holding something in his hands. I thought about not opening the door. I really did. But curiosity won. I opened it. "MacKenzie," he said softly, "can we talk?" I stepped aside. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed closure. He looked around my space, taking it all in. "You look good," he said. "The place looks great." I nodded, arms folded. "What do you want, Tom?" He sat down on the couch, rubbing his temples. "I messed up," he whispered. "I see that now. I lost my job. Company downsized. I'm still paying off the loan. Sarah refuses to work. Says she's not ready. The place is a mess. The kids are out of control. The landlord's threatening to kick us out." I stayed quiet. He looked up, eyes pleading. "I came to say I'm sorry. And I was hoping maybe we could try again. Start fresh. With your help, we could fix it." I nearly laughed. "Tom," I said, voice calm, "I appreciate the apology, and I'm sorry you're struggling, but I can't go back." "But I've changed," he insisted. "I understand now." "No, Tom," I said, standing. "I've changed. These past few months taught me what I'm capable of, what I deserve. I deserve respect. I deserve peace. I deserve to be seen." He stood too, desperation in his voice. "So that's it? No chance?" I opened the door. "That's it. I wish you the best, but I'm not your safety net." He stepped out, nodding slowly. "Goodbye, MacKenzie." "Goodbye, Tom." I closed the door, and I didn't cry. I didn't crumble. I just exhaled. Free! The door clicked shut behind Tom, and I just stood there for a moment, fingers still resting on the knob. The quiet was deafening, but it wasn't empty. It was peaceful. It was mine. I took a deep breath and exhaled everything I had been carrying for months. Grief, guilt, anger, fear. All of it flowed out into the silence like smoke fading into the air. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. I didn't cry that night. I didn't stay up wondering if I'd made the right choice. I didn't feel sad or lonely. I felt free. And that freedom? It was worth every moment of pain that led up to it. The following weeks were quiet. I went to work, came home, watered my little herb garden. I made soup from scratch. I bought a bookshelf and filled it with novels I'd always meant to read. I found joy in the tiniest things: a clean sink, a podcast while folding laundry, birds singing outside my window. My friends started to comment on the difference in me. "You're glowing," one of them said during brunch. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," another added. I smiled, because I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. Peace is louder than chaos, and I had earned mine. The divorce paperwork was finalized a few months later. When I signed the last document, I expected to feel something big: grief, regret, anger. But I felt calm. It was over. I wasn't MacKenzie the wife anymore, I was just MacKenzie. And that felt powerful. I started journaling every morning, just a few thoughts, nothing fancy. But over time, those pages became a kind of map, guiding me back to myself. I wrote about my dreams, about the way I wanted to feel, about the version of me I'd buried beneath everyone else's needs. And slowly, that version came back to life. I started saying no without guilt. No, I can't help you move this weekend. No, I'm not available tonight. No, I'm not responsible for fixing other people's messes. And just as importantly, I started saying yes. Yes to trying pottery. Yes to meeting new people. Yes to putting myself first. One Saturday, I passed by a community board advertising a weekend retreat for women going through life transitions. Something about the flyer stopped me in my tracks. The theme was Rediscovering You. It felt like the universe had stuck a Post-it on my forehead. I signed up that night. The retreat was held at a quiet lodge surrounded by woods and birdsong. There were about 30 of us, women of all ages, shapes, and stories. Some had gone through divorces. Others had lost loved ones. Some were empty nesters, figuring out what came next. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone in my story. We cried. We laughed. We meditated under trees and danced barefoot in the grass. We shared secrets and dreams and fears. And we listened, really listened. There was this moment around a campfire on the second night where we were asked to finish the sentence. I'm letting go of... When it was my turn, I took a breath and said, I'm letting go of being the woman who begged to be seen. The group went quiet. Then, one by one, they nodded. Some clapped. Others whispered, yes. And just like that, something in me unlocked. That weekend changed me. Not because it fixed me, but because it reminded me that I was never broken to begin with. When I got home, I made changes. I canceled the joint bank account Tom and I had never gotten around to closing. I donated the last of the dishes we'd picked out as a couple. I painted the bedroom a soft lilac and bought new bedding, plush, cozy, completely mine. I planted more herbs, started cooking meals just for fun, took long walks without checking my phone, and I started dreaming again. I had always wanted to write, a blog, a column, maybe even a book one day. For years I'd brushed it off, too busy, too tired, too impractical. But now I wasn't too anything. I created a blog and named it Still Growing. My first post was titled, The Day I Chose Me. It was raw, honest, scary to publish, but the response? Overwhelming. Comments poured in from women all over the country. Thank you for sharing this. This is my story too. I thought I was the only one. Each message reminded me that my voice mattered, that my story, however messy, was worth telling. Over the next few months, I wrote about everything: boundaries, burnout, starting over, finding joy in small things. The blog grew faster than I expected. I got emails from podcast hosts, invitations to guest write, even a message from a small publishing house asking if I'd considered writing a memoir. And for the first time, I said yes without doubting myself. One evening, I got an email from Tom. It was short. I read your blog. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted the email. Not out of bitterness. Out of peace. I didn't need closure from him anymore. I had given it to myself. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. 1 year after walking out of that restaurant, I stood in my tiny kitchen, lighting a candle for myself. A celebration of survival, of growth, of becoming. I wasn't the woman who asked permission anymore. I was the woman who owned her story, who forgave herself for staying too long, who honored herself for finally leaving, and who knew, deep in her bones, that the best parts of her life were still ahead.